last one we have here for today is Anapriya's, and that's about how, asking the question, are some cultures inherently more peaceful? What the study on peace systems tells us about conflict-free workplaces. And the question that this it seems more of a review of sorts, but do the following multiple factors promote peace within dynamic peace systems? And so they have these following factors: an overarching common identity in addition to local identities, which is kind of funny. That's what the earlier study was on. A high degree of pro-social interconnectedness among the social units within a system, interdependence among the social units, core values and norms that are non-warring and peace-favoring, narratives, rituals, ceremonies, and symbols that reinforce peaceful values, norms, beliefs, and conduct, superordinate institutions, mechanisms for nonviolent intergroup conflict management, and visionary peace leadership. And so it's just looking at, do these factors promote peace within these systems? And the authors, to test this, the authors searched historical and anthropological literature and found 16 well-documented examples of peace systems. And then they designed a coding sheet of 46 cases that comprise peace systems and non-peace systems. And it seemed like they were the first to define peace systems in the way that they did, because there's no other database of the same that had existed prior. They ran these tests along with this machine learning algorithm to understand the various relationships of these parameters with each other. And what they found here, and you go to the results, Jeremy, is that they found many significant correlations among the 8 features that we just went through that were elements of dynamic peace systems. And then common overarching identity and interconnectedness were positively correlated to all 7 other peace system variables. So it seems to be a central element. And then the highest contributing factor to a peace system outcome was the existence of non-warring norms, followed in order of decreasing importance by non-warring rituals, non-warring values, security, interdependence, and so forth, which to me makes sense, just because if you want a peace system to be successful, non-warring norms do tend to be important. And what Anapriya translated this, or how she translated this to the workplace, was building a culture of peace. That the 8 factors that promote peace can be applied to the workplace in multiple ways. For example, building an overarching common identity unique to the company and its objectives can create unification and collaboration, despite the differences of diverse identities like nationality, religion, language, etc. And there's already some form of interdependence among the different workplace units, with units like finance, HR, marketing, sales, that can be capitalized further to improve interaction. And that managers can reinforce this interconnectedness and not work in silos in order to improve the level of peace in the organization. So yeah, that's what we have for this one.
I think this is such a cool and important study. When I saw this, I was like, wow, this is. I mean, we should definitely be creating some literature and protocol around this study, because I have not seen, like they said, I have not seen any other study that's because I think throughout evolutionary human history, the norm has been war. The norm has been violence, violent raids, small tribal warfare, and so that's kind of the running story. And I think the story here was, but that's not true for everyone. There are exceptions to that. There are some peaceful societies, which you really don't hear much about. And so looking at those societies, like what are the common factors? That's very interesting. I think we should definitely look at this and think about how we can create some interesting protocols for companies to kind of to review their current practices.
It'd be interesting to, go ahead, Tony.
No, I was thinking the same thing with this one, but then also the study before with the subgroup identity and that one, is that, I mean, a lot of times I feel like we're focusing on leadership and the people at the top, but perhaps this is saying that we could start focusing more on those subgroups, those teams, and doing trainings specifically in that team level.
Yeah, team building.
And,
team identification. Yeah.
Right. within the organization, and then working with all the different teams within the organization, instead of so much top down. Because I mean,
Yeah.
you know, traditionally you kind of think, well, leadership starts at the top, but this is just making me think, yes, but this seems like it's where the real work could get, where the real influence and where the real change could happen if we're working with people at that team level.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in like, so promoting that, the common identity, like the subgroup identity, promoting an overarching identity, an organizational identity, that pro-social interconnectedness among the subgroups. How, you know, we're interconnected, we're also interdependent on each other, and like highlighting that, making that very salient for people.
Right.
And I think this is something that I, you know, so we talk a lot about identity, interdependence. I think that's super important. Something that we don't really talk about a lot, which is really, I think it was a really cool part of this study, is having peace and non-warring values and norms. And it seems like among the peaceful societies, they have norms, they have like actual language around non-warring, around peace. And having like symbols, rituals, ceremonies that are like reinforcing those types of norms, and even peace leadership, like leaders that reinforce it as well.
Yep, and we can help people to create that for themselves and make it part of their culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because I think if anything, I mean, I a lot of times I think societies talk about, you know, sort of like defense, right? I mean, they have a Department of Defense, and there's a lot of thought around defending ourselves in some sort of violent way. There's no Department of Peace. There's no sort of, you know, proactive measures to promote peace necessarily, at least through like sort of traditional governmental channels. And I think that even in organizations, they don't have, they may just be benign on the idea. They may not talk about defense and war, but they also probably don't talk about peace and sort of non-warring values. They probably just like don't talk about it at all. So I think like promoting peace in a very deliberate way might be helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. You make me think of, I just finished a book called Tribe by Sebastian Junger, and it's about tribes and belonging and relatedness, as according to like self-determination theory. And the author talks about and opens up a lot of the book surrounding Native American tribes, and how you know, a long time ago, you know, these tribes that were consisted of, you know, smaller groups of people, you know, there were a lot of deterrents for acting against the group, because you're such a small group of people meant that, you know, there's a threat to your survival as the group. I know, you know, abandoning the group or killing someone, or, you know, whatever, you face some major repercussions for that, because it would hurt the entire group. And he also makes the point that the societies that were able to cooperate and work together with each other are the ones that kind of have evolved,
Sure.
you know, as societies. So it's interesting to see that in light of this study, where you know, where they were practicing very similar things and these non-warring norms. And I think that you're right, that if you could, like, I don't know how you would phrase it in terms of like, because conflict is kind of inevitable, but in an organization, but because you can't have no conflict in an organization, but how to make it so, you know, you don't get to a certain point, or how you communicate.
But you promote peace like through symbols, rituals, you know, it's just deliberate sort of promotion. And then you also mechanisms for intergroup conflict management, or for even probably intra-group conflict management that are sort of nonviolent. I think that's
Yeah.
Looking at this, I mean, like the words interconnectedness, interdependence, those are things that are really like jumping out at me versus competition. So that if we can help them to focus more on collaborating and cooperating and moving forward, as opposed to competing, even within their subgroup. Because I mean, that's kind of how, at least in America, I mean, that's basically how it is from kindergarten on. It's you're kind of competing for best reader in the class, um, fastest kid in the relays, and it's all about competing,
Mhm.
um, until you maybe start to get into team sports where then in that way we're sort of socialized. Okay, team first.
Mhm.
But even in the workplace, I mean, you're competing for promotion, you're competing for, you know, just everything. You're always competing, and but because that's the culture. And I don't know that we can change the culture, but maybe we can introduce some options.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it's tough because it's like egalitarianism is impossible with hierarchies. It's like it's sort of the opposite, and it's like you can't have complete equality of outcomes or complete equity in a capitalistic society, especially with hierarchies. So there's like what kind of culture and society do we live in, and where's the balance? Because we can't have our cake and eat it too, unfortunately.
that's true.
So
That's
it's
true.
like what works for each culture? Because like you look at sales teams, you go like some sales teams like we wouldn't be as successful if we didn't have all our salespeople competing against each other. But at the end of the
True.
day, is that a good thing? I guess maybe for the organization, or is that like does that create conflicts and problems? And it's like, oh, well, we don't care about those kind of conflicts because if someone can't take the heat, get them out of the kitchen. Like you know. So it's like I think every organization is a different type of culture, and it's like what kind of culture do they want to promote? If their goal is peace, then maybe these would be some great tools.
And I worked in an organization a couple years ago that I think actually achieved this really well, like this idea of interconnectedness and like being kind of an overall team, even though we're different groups. And it was one of the best environments that I've ever been in. It was a really neat place. Like we had a lot of different staff from various backgrounds as well. And so we had a lot of conversations though, just like water cooler chat, but like people were so open to just talking about, their different, like maybe where their home country is or their own customs and rituals. Even religion was like a topic that was okay to be broached. And that was in the, overarching scheme, but there was a lot of ways that really focused on trying to connect us all as like one big group. And in recognizing the individual teams, but it was a really, really positive, peaceful work environment.
That's
And so
cool.
I think it was neat to kind of see how she shifted that, and to think that I, have gotten to see that a little bit, but I think it does work. There was very little conflict that I remember.
How large was the organization?
This one, I think we had, so it was within the university. I think we had over, maybe 150 total between faculty and staff.
Wow, that's actually very like nice to hear, surprisingly nice to hear in a university. Well, especially and it's I wonder what the difference would be in like a for-profit organization when there's like pressure to sort of on revenue pressure and customer service pressure and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's more competitive nature in those kinds of organizations.
And that's
Like certainly there's lots of conflict in schools. I mean, plenty of conflict to go around,
And competition.
Yeah, and competition.
But I think that's a great point because, and ultimately I work for a state university too. So that, it is a little bit different in terms of how that works.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
For profit. And